إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
قال الله تعالى في القرآن الكريم إن الله عنده علم الساعة وينزل الغيث ويعلم ما في الأرحام وما يدري نفسا ماذا تكسب غدا وما يدري نفسا بأي أرض تموت إن الله عليم خبير. Allah says in the Quran, indeed with Allah rests the knowledge of when the last hour will come and when the rain will be sent down, and Allah knows what is in the wombs, and no one knows what tomorrow may bring, and no one knows in which land they will die. And indeed Allah is all-knowing and all-aware. So this verse clearly tells us that no one, not even the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, had the complete knowledge of the hour, of the final hour, when it will arrive or what the future will hold. And therefore in Islam there is a huge thing against fortune telling, that it is haram, it is forbidden, because nobody knows the future, and why should we know the future? It is true that Allah has gifted some people with some of the knowledge of the future, and the Nabi Muhammad ﷺ has admitted this, and he said that Allah has gifted some people with this knowledge, but they mix it with 100 lies. So it's like a drop of something that Allah has given them, a peek into the future, but they will mix it with 100 lies and they'll tell you this is going to happen to you and that's going to happen to you. So the Prophet said, stay away from such people. So we then need to ask ourselves the question of what benefit is it to know our future? Is it going to change anything? There are numerous hadith of which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, or of which some are still being quoted even if the source is inauthentic. We hear these hadith sometimes regurgitated in the mosques. Talks about the signs of Qiyamah. So as I said, we don't know the future, but yet we have these hadith that talks about the signs of Qiyamah. So obviously the Nabi Muhammad ﷺ was given some information about the signs of Qiyamah, and it was important to know some of them, especially for a people who have asked a lot of questions around when is Qiyamah. Is it true that Allah says that there will be an hour? Scientists are saying that it won't be from 1 million years by far, but Allah says it is quite nearby. And some of these hadith are really general. When you look at these signs, they're really general. They're signs that could have possibly started to happen 500 years back. For example, signs about children being disrespectful to their parents. We've always had children being disrespectful towards their parents. Perhaps, maybe as time progresses and as we develop, or the lack of development within humanity, we see more of these things happening more openly. I've done some research on the signs of Qiyamah, and I looked at the hadith. No website gives you where these hadith really coming from. But everybody says it's a hadith by so-and-so, and it's a hadith by so-and-so. And if you should really look at the authenticity of this hadith, you will find that most of these hadith are either fabricated, some of them are regarded as weak hadith, some of them are raised to the level of Hasan, which means it is acceptable, but yet when you look in the chain of narrators, one of the people in the chain of narrators are of questionable character. Someone might have even been flogged for zina, but the hadith are still being used. Some of these hadith even are related 400 years after the Prophet passed away. So one kind of questions like, how come people didn't record this hadith much earlier? How come 400 years after the Prophet passed away, we suddenly see a hadith that says homosexuality is one of the signs of Qiyamah? And this is at the time when Islam has moved into the West, into Europe, and Christianity has already formulated some sort of notion around homosexuality. So one must be very careful when we look at these signs to know where it is actually coming from. Now when we turn to the Quran makes it clear that the Day of Judgment will happen. It is something that will happen. Even science tells us this, that because the universe is constantly expanding, there was this Big Bang, the universe is constantly expanding like an elastic. So at some point you can only pull the elastic that far. And so some believe that yes, the earth, well, they're not sure what will happen, but certainly the earth in a couple of years' time will not be the same earth as we understand it now, or see it now, or experience it now. So the Quran prepares us for this event that's going to happen. So perhaps there's merit in not knowing our future. And the Nabi Muhammad ﷺ also encouraged us not to look into the future. Perhaps the reason was so that we can live in the present. There's nothing for us in the past, because we know when we look into the past we can't change it. Things happen, yes, we might be able to make meaning out of it, but there's nothing we can do to change it. The future is something that still needs to happen, and if it was determined something was going to happen, then it's going to happen. There's also nothing you can do about it. So the messages that the Quran gives us of the day to the hour to come is really to make us conscious about that something like that is going to happen, and that at some point we will have to be accountable or brought to book for the injustices, no matter what, if it's a small injustice or a big injustice. Like for example, the Quran says, وَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَن يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. That he who has done an atom's weight of good, he will see it, and he who has done an atom's weight of bad will see it. So to such an extent, this justice will be restored on the Day of Judgment. So that is what the Quran is trying to make us conscious about. That we have to be so conscious and responsible for the things that we do, for the actions that we take, and for the intentions that we hold. And the Quran says, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. And that day will come where everything on this earth or in this universe will perish, except for the face of Allah, which is full of majesty, full of bounty, and full of honor. So if you are really interested in trying to find out about these signs of Qiyamah, then the best thing is to read perhaps Surah Waqiyah and Surah Qiyamah, which are full of signs of the Day of Judgment. For example, in Surah Waqiyah it says, وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. But the foremost on this day will be those who were the foremost in faith and good deeds. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. And they, the ones that will be saved on the Day of Judgment, they were the ones who were constantly seeking to draw closer to Allah. So in their deeds they were trying to draw closer to Allah, in their intentions they were drawing closer to Allah. So we should not worry, to have to worry if our engagements in this life was authentic and was with integrity and with Allah consciousness. Then you wouldn't have to worry. Because Allah says that nobody's deed will be cast in vain. One of the signs of Qiyamah is that religious judgment will be left in the hands of the ignorant. Now, I was just talking to Nadeem this morning when I was doing some reading up on this. I discovered that in 2004, and it was recorded by BBC, in 2004, the death sentences was imposed on a liberal Iranian academic. He was called Hashim Ahajari, and he was charged with blasphemy for saying that Muslims should not blind follow religious leaders. So just because he said that, he was given the death sentence. Another one in 2001, the court of Pakistan has sentenced a medical lecturer, Dr. Yunus Sheikh, to death for blasphemy. He has been accused of making derogatory remarks about the Prophet Muhammad by suggesting that he did not become Muslim until he was 40 years old, and his parents were not Muslim either. It's a fact. It's a fact, but just because he stated it, people don't want to hear this, because we put the Prophet in such a pedestal that we can't even attain to the Prophet ﷺ. and he was also given the death sentence. So this kind of judgment, we see it all over, increasingly in our society, how religious judgments are being made without even considering. For example, the Quran says, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ الْحَيَاءِ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. And in the law of equality, there is the saving of life, O you of understanding, so that you may restrain yourself. So the Quran is pro-life, that we should think twice before we kill somebody, or before we kill anything, even if it's a tree. The Prophet said, you must consider that what benefit this tree can bring to humanity. So to such an extent we have to preserve life. So how can we still think of killing somebody just because they don't agree with us? So what we then do, and this is the injustice that we're talking about, that even if it's an atom's weight of injustice, we will have to account for it on the Day of Judgment, is that we're robbing the person not just from his freedom of speech, but we're also killing him for doing so. So double injustice. The third question this raises is that, are we as Muslims so insecure that if someone disagrees or insults us, or insults Islam, or insults our Prophet, that we have to kill them? What happens to dialogue as a response? What happens to living out Islam and being an example of a good Muslim and having others benefit from this example? No, but we have to kill them if they disagree. So is there any value to be placed on these hadith that talks about the signs of Qiyamah? That I think as Muslims we need to consider how we contribute to these signs. So if the Nabi Muhammad said that there will be widespread killing of Muslims amongst my ummah, then we need to question, how do we contribute to this? If there's widespread of ignorance amongst religious leaders, then we need to question as religious leaders, how are we contributing to this? At what point did we stop thinking and questioning? So one of the ways we can save ourselves from being contributors to this state of humanity is by holding on to our pure faith. And we need to understand what that pure faith is. We need to be constantly seeking knowledge. As I often say, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Seek knowledge walau hatta fi seen, even if you have to go as far as China. And being constantly open and respectful of difference. There will always be difference. So to be conscious about this, and to be open to be challenged. If somebody challenges you on your beliefs, is to take the best responses out of that. And the best response is not to kill them because they differ with you. The best response would be then, show them how you live out this reality that you believe in. Or challenge them with the facts, like the Quran says, Kul hatum burhanakum in kuntum sadiqin. If they still want to believe their way and you believe your way, then you follow what the Quran says, Lakum dinakum waliyadin. You for your way and I for my way. And let Allah be the judge of that. But killing is not the answer. Oh Allah, assist those who assist the cause of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Oh Allah, assist those who strive towards good in every place. Oh Allah, make things easy for us and remove difficulty from us. And oh Allah, complete us in goodness, for truly you are the most noble of those who provide assistance.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.